All right, we're live. This is Dynasty Evaluation Show. I'm John McGlynn, John McGlynn 75. We're here with Fantasy and Frames and my guy JT Orange. JT, what's going on, brother?
Hey, happy to be here to talk some rookie kind of dynasty tiers, see what we can do here with the draft coming up.
We have a lot to do, so get ready. Put your seatbelts on. Get ready for a show. So JT, how much you've been diving in these rookies? I mean, you've already known for these guys for 3 years now, huh? This is kind of
Yeah, for me, I'm such a college football nut that a lot of these guys, people are hearing about for the first time if they don't really watch college football. A lot of these guys, I play C2C. I'm in a ton of Debbie leagues, so a lot of these guys I've been on for a couple years. Some of these guys, come out of nowhere. There's guys, that have big seasons that no one really saw coming. So there's a little bit of mix, and I feel like this is the time you really want to get your rankings together, the guys you like that you think really have the talent. And then from there, look where they actually go in the after the combine, once they actually get drafted, see the landing spots. That's then where you want to adjust your rankings. So for me, I love doing both. I like setting up, getting everything set beforehand, look at the guys I like before landing spots, and then readjust after the draft.
Yeah, it's fun seeing all these when these people land. Old fashioned football, SGPN. What's up, gents? Thanks for joining us here today. Much appreciated. I watch. I'm a Notre Dame fan, so I mostly watch Notre Dame or Big Ten stuff. So when it gets outside to the West Coast games that I catch on Saturday night, or when I'm half in the bag at midnight when the games are finishing up, or the East Coast games that are on at 10 o'clock in the morning, kind of I'll catch those with a cup of coffee Saturday morning, kind of stuff like that. But I'm not as big into college football as you are, but I do a lot of trending with these guys and where they're ranked at. And man, it's funny how people trend from. We were talking pregame show, how people trend from the fifth round a while ago to the first round, right before the draft, and anywhere in between. It's absolutely fantastic. This is why we do all this stuff. And we were just talking before this show, me and Nick Scripp and Kevin Murray, about what all the stuff that people think that there's nothing going on right now because fantasy football is over. You're not setting lineups. This is the busiest time of the season for everybody that's like that loves
time of the year.
Football. It's the greatest. It's almost like Christmas morning. You're waiting for the draft to come. You're waiting for your drafts. You get to do all this research and find out who you're going to draft in your dynasty leagues. If you're not in dynasty, this is the time to make your team, make your league a dynasty league. It'll take a year or two to figure dynasty thing out. But it's not like people are afraid because it's like a 5-year window. If you don't pick the right guy, you're SOL. Generally speaking, look at it like a 1.5 or 2 year window, because most of the time, if you look 2 years ago at your team you had in Dynasty, there's probably not one player on your entire roster that you drafted from 2 years ago that's still on your roster right now, unless it's like Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or something like that. And even then, it's questionable because I trade like 15 times a day. So,
yeah, I did. This is why I love it. When I got into Dynasty, it was one of the big reasons I got into it. I love this because I love rookies. I love rookie drafts. I love the draft. I love the combine, and it's combine week, baby. I'm pumped. I'm going to try to get over. I got my NFL One passes this week. I signed up for them. I'm a couple hours from Indy. I'm going to try to get over there at least one day, maybe two if I can swing it with work. But I'm pumped to get over there and check it out. And that's why Dynasty's fun. It's all year. It's all year. And this is I love this time of year, the back and forth, rating the rookies, looking at the film, watching guys go up and down the lists. It's absolutely the best for me.
How do you feel? We talked about this yesterday. How do you feel about these guys not showing up or showing up, shaking hands and kissing babies and not doing anything, that kind of stuff? It's not the old days. Everybody did everything kind of thing, unless you were hurt,
Yeah. It's a little disappointing. I understand now with all the pro days, because the pro days used to be kind of like a secondary thing for guys that didn't get invited to the combine. That was like their chance to kind of show out. Well, now everybody's like, no, I'll just do it at my pro day. And that's nice. You got the pro days, different time stuff, but it does hurt the draft a little bit when you don't see all these guys go against each other. Everybody opting out, and I understand it. I understand like a Marvin Harrison Jr. Is he really going to go up at all by working out? Probably not. The guy's probably where he's going to be. But I also think a lot of these guys might be overestimating their stock right now. I think they look out there and they see everybody talking about them, And they're like, oh, I'm a guaranteed top 5 or top 10 pick. I'm not so sure about that for a lot of these guys. So I think if you get any chance to show out and give an opportunity, I mean, look at Anthony Richardson last year, crushes the combine. Is he a top 5 pick without going and crushing at the combine? Absolutely not. There's no way the Colts take him at 4 if he doesn't go out, do all the drills, and just blow people's minds at the combine last year. So I think people have to take that into consideration. Here's the next thing. You're going to get a bump if you actually compete at the combine because so many guys are opting out. Like if you actually are QB and you throw, man, if I'm a guy that isn't top 2 or 3 right now, I am just I want to get out there and throw. I'm begging. Let me get in there. Let me throw because you're going to get all the attention. You're going to get all the looks from all the teams because all these other guys aren't throwing. And
yeah, there's this guy named JJ McCarthy that's been rising up draft board. Whatever he goes in there and runs like a 4, like right below a 4, like a 4 or 5, something like that. Like, you know, some really good time.
If he throws some crazy athletic numbers out there that people, because again, he's a guy that definitely can move. I think he's athletic. I think he's very underrated athletically. I think that is going to get teams going, ooh, okay. Maybe he's a little bit more of an athlete than we thought he was. And he's a perfect example. I mean, I think a guy, if he goes out there and he puts on a show, man, he could lock himself in as a top 10 guy. He really could. And he could jump some of these other players. So I'm always just a fan of competing. I understand these guys have a lot to lose in some areas if they do compete in the combine, but I just love the combine. I want to see all the action. I love watching. I love watching the 40 times all the wide receivers running it right next to each other. Like, you know, when they show that, I think that stuff's great. And I just want to see guys that want to compete. I understand it's a business decision for some guys not to do it, but I want to see a guy that wants to get out there, is begging to get out there and show what he has.
I get it. Like we talked about yesterday, that I think that some of these people, like when you go to a different stadium and it takes a little while for it to adjust to the lights, or a little bit brighter, the grass is a little bit higher, or, you know, the sounds throw you off a little bit, or you're not throwing to your guys. All, you know, I understand people want that most controlled environment because this is like the ACT for athletes kind of thing. You know, if you know, they don't want to just nuke this thing because they made a mistake or they weren't throwing right or the ball didn't come out their fingers, you know, the right way, or, you know, that kind of stuff. I get it where these guys they want all the right conditions so they can perform at peak evaluation form, you know, or peak form. You know, I get it, but at the same time, if you can go out there, you're going to have to produce anyway. You're just avoiding the inevitable of going to a home stadium or an away stadium and you have to perform in the snow and the rain and, you know, that kind of stuff. So just get it over with, man. Go out there, show them what you got, and, you know, it is what it is. But let's
I think the negatives are I think they get overhyped. I mean, if a team's already interested you, they watched a ton of your film, all they're looking for is a little bit of that, like, oh, see, I knew he was really good. You know, that's all they want is a little confirmation. I have a hard to believe that guys just completely fall off for certain teams if they don't perform perfectly, you know, at their pro day or at, you know, the combine. You know, the guys that really kill themselves are wide receivers and some other dudes that if they end up running terrible times and have a terrible high jump, you know, vertical jump and things like that, where they're like, ooh, this guy's maybe not as athletic as we thought he was. Those are the guys I think that get burned a little more. But how many times have we seen defensive linemen, linemen go here and they show out and all of a sudden they're flying up boards. The guys are like, oh man, I didn't realize he was that athletic. That 330-pound guy just ran a 4.740. You know, I think a lot of times those things can help you more than hurt you. There are a few guys that does hurt them, but again, those guys are going to get probably exposed somewhere around along the line anyway. So I think that's kind of my take on it, I guess.
Yeah, let's talk about some of these rookies, where they can go, and, you know, where you should grab them at with your team build kind of thing. We're gonna talk through the lens of a Superflex tight end premium February ADP from the mocks at DLF. That's JT writes and does some stuff, ranks and stuff for DLF. So you know, he had the luxury of getting some ranks for us. So let's talk about that, JT. So we got all these are broken down in a first round picks 1 to 4. Who do you got here?
Yeah, so I kind of broke these ADPs into 1 to 4, 5 to 8, 9 to 12 for first, second, third rounders. Kind of, we're just trying to give you an idea. If you're looking at your rosters right now, and you're going, hey, where do I'm drafting on each of my dynasty teams? We're just going to kind of talk about where some guys are going now and maybe give you an idea of who you could get in that range. Because that's what everybody wants to look at. You want to look at it and say, hey, who's the guys that might drop to me? Who do I need to look at? And again, sometimes you can't move up to the perfect spot to draft a guy. So maybe you have to actually take somebody earlier than ADP says to, because that's your only chance to get him if you really like a player. So we're just going to kind of talk through these. So the ones I pulled up here, February DLF Superflex time premium, like we talked about, 1 through 4, 101, Caleb Williams, quarterback, USC. Everybody's got him up there. I think, if you're in a super flex league, he's going to go number 1 in pretty much every league, unless you really need a wide receiver. Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receiver out of Ohio State, one of my favorite players. I absolutely love him. I'm in the mix here in a couple leagues where I'm at 102, 103. And my question is, I'm hoping he gets to me. If I have the 101 and I'm really hurting for wide receiver, I'm in a spot right now where I have somebody trying to trade me the 101 and I have the 103, and I'm definitely debating whether I need to move up to 101 to get Harrison. I have a pretty solid team. My team was bad last year, injuries and whatnot, but my wide receiver core is awful. I have loaded with running backs. I got pretty good QBs, but my wide receiver group is just bad. So this is something where I'm looking at, if I need a wide receiver, a cornerstone guy, that's maybe where I'm looking if I think I need to move up. But that's where you want to look at your teammate or your league mates. Do they need QB? Do they need wide receiver? Might give you a better idea where someone's dropping. Right now, Drake May, quarterback from North Carolina, is at 103. And then Jaden Daniels, quarterback from LSU, is at 104. But Jaden Daniels is got a head of steam. He is moving up on Drake May big time. If you're on Twitter very much looking at stuff, there's a lot of Drake May hate at the moment. And you're going to see this throughout the draft cycle. You'll have times where guys are up, then guys are down. People love them. They don't like them. I'm not sure. Daniels just said he's not throwing at the combine. I think it's a mistake. I know as far as the Twitter community is concerned and fantasy is concerned, everyone thinks he's a top 3, top 4 pick. I'm not 100% sold he is. I'm just not so sure. I know in fantasy world, we want all to see all these QBs go at the top. I'm not sure that he is a guaranteed top 3 or top 4 pick. For me, I'd want to be out there. I'd want to run the 40. I'd want to throw, because again, if he puts up crazy athletic numbers like Anthony Richardson did last year, to me, he jumps himself guaranteed into that top 3, top 4 picks. But if he doesn't, are there going to be teams that are still questions with him? So that's where I'm at there. People love the rushing upside of Daniel. I think May is a little bit underrated as an athlete, but those are the guys kind of at the top. So if you want a top QB, as far as right now, you got to be in that top 4. And if you want a shot at Marvin Harrison, you pretty much got to be in that top 3 or 4 as well.
Yeah, I got 103 in the draft. I'm not a big rookie pick guy. But I have in the league, a lot of leagues I have anyway. I got guys like I have Trevor Lawrence as my third quarterback with Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen as my quarterbacks. Now, I'm hoping that Caleb Williams goes first, and I'm hoping that somebody else trades up that needs a quarterback to take Drake May, Jaden Daniels, whoever moves up, hopefully, so that Harrison falls in my lap. And even at then, I'll still get a chance at Brock Bowers, which we'll talk about later. But these are, if you're in a situation where, like you said, you're a pretty good quarterback, pretty good at everything else, you're just crossing your fingers that Marvin Harrison falls to you at 3, or somebody takes Caleb at 1. That somebody trades up in your draft on draft day or in your draft room and take Caleb Williams. It's so hard to say that you want to plant your flag on Drake May or Jaden Daniels right now, because there's a lot of questions with those guys. Caleb doesn't have that many questions except holding the ball a little bit too long. He's been compared to Justin Fields. But it's your team makeup. What do you need? This is a super flex we're talking about now, and quarterbacks are gold. There's only 32 of them in the league, and probably 22 of them that are even worth anything, even to have it on your team. So, this is a decision you need to make.
And this is a situation where, this is where if you want to trade out, if you are pretty good at QB, but your team had injuries, something happened, you just, kind of fell apart. This might be the time to go out, trade out to someone that loves one of these QBs, and you move back, and you either move back in the draft or you get some veteran guys some wide receivers. That's a different show. We'll talk about like who you could trade those guys for. But that's something you need to look at too when you're looking at these rookie drafts. Is there a spot where maybe moving out of the draft for some more experienced players might be the move? 5 through 8 right now in the first round. Wide receiver Malik Neighbors, LSU at 105, 106, tight end Brock Bowers from Georgia, 107, Roma Dunze, the wide receiver from Washington, and way, way, way up, almost a whole round from last month is quarterback JJ McCarthy from Michigan. He was going mid-second round in mock drafts, and now the heat is on. People are talking about him. Jim Harbaugh said, hey, this guy is the top quarterback in the draft. He's a franchise guy. People kind of chuckled and said, oh, you got to say that because, you were his college coach. And now it's starting to look like everybody else is starting to believe him. There's a lot of people talking about him going in the top 15, about a lot of teams trading up inside the top 15 or even into the top 10 to make sure they get him. If that actually happens in the real life NFL draft, you're going to see people going up to get JJ McCarthy. And there might be, depending on landing spot, if JJ McCarthy ends up on like someone like the Falcons, say the Falcons took him at like 8, you would have some people that might be really excited about that with what Falcons offense has weapons. There's a chance that maybe McCarthy even goes from 1-8 into that top 4 or 5, especially in a 2 QB league. It could get real interesting there. What do you think about these guys? I think these wide receivers, Neighbors, to me, if you don't get Marvin Harrison, I think Neighbors is right there next to him.
Yeah.
I love Neighbors. There's a lot of people kind of out there pushing for Neighbors to actually be number 1 over Marvin Harrison. Also, Dunze. There is a big Dunze crowd out there that think if it wasn't anybody else, these guys, they think Dunze is number 1. There's a lot of people that like him better. So again, I think you look at these guys and decide who you like better, and then you take it. Don't worry what everybody else says. If you like Neighbors better than Marvin Harrison Jr., then get Neighbors. If you like a Dunze, especially after the landing spot, you see where he goes. If you like a Dunze more, get a Dunze. If a Dunze goes to, the Chargers and Marvin Harrison Jr. goes to the Patriots, I can see you going, I want a Dunze. I want him with Herbert over Marvin Harrison, who I don't know who his quarterback's going to be. So again, this is why I want to rank these guys in advance, see who I like first, and then I can readjust after the actual NFL draft. But this is the spot, Brock Bowers. Everybody's kind of talking about. If you're in a high tight end premium league or in a start 2 tight end league, I've seen Bowers going as high as 1-1 or 1-2. Mm-hmm. I mean, the guy is an absolute freak. I'm seeing people mock him to the Colts at 15. I would run out and get my Brock Bowers jersey immediately if that happened. I would love to see him on the Colts, even though they have 75 tight ends on the roster already. I just think he's a game changer of a player. I think you can play him anywhere. I just think he's one of those guys, you hate to see, you don't usually want to take tight ends this high, but I think he's totally worth it. What do you think, John?
The thing is, I saw a mock yesterday that it was super interesting. It's the Bears traded back to 2, and they took Marvin Harrison with number 2, and then at the number 9 pick, they took JJ McCarthy. It was their, they traded away Justin Fields and something else already before then, but then they traded their 1 to drop back 1 and take McCarthy and Harrison. That was pretty wild. I like watching these mock drafts and seeing the speculation, but yeah, you kind of nailed it. This is a great spot to be in right now, especially if you're pretty good at a quarterback. It's super flex, yes. Your quarterbacks are gold, like we talked about before. But if you're good at receiver, you're good at quarterback. There's really only one sure thing tight end in this entire draft right now. Anyway, the beginning of the draft, and that is Brock Bowers. The guy that he'll be able to block some bigger guys is really his only flaw. I think he catches well. His yak ability is fantastic. He doesn't drop the ball too often. Everything about him is pretty damn good. So, but you really can't. This is a great spot to be in. I think I have the 103. I'm contemplating trading back to go to like 105, 106. Maybe get like a Jahan Dotson thrown in there, or something like that, or somebody that's undervalued right now to drop back 2 spots and just kind of beef up your roster a little bit with somebody, or just get a couple second round picks if you're rebuilding. Drop from 103 to 105. Look who you got here. It's your choice between maybe one of these quarterbacks fall. Or you got Neighbors, Roma Dunze. Then we haven't got to the guys in the next section. There's some pretty good dudes in the next tier also. But this is a great spot to be in the draft. This is for everybody who talks about this as such a BS draft. There's a lot of talent in this draft. A lot of guys that are super underrated. And there's not, like you said earlier, there's not a big teardrop between Marvin Harrison and Malik Neighbors. I like Malik Neighbors a lot, and they have a lot of similarities. So,
yeah, if you can have a pick, if you're in a super flex league, if you have a pick one in the top 7 or 8, I mean, it's great. I mean, I'm loving anyone I get here, and I think other than maybe McCarthy, depending on where he gets drafted and to who. I mean, even if he gets drafted later and goes like to the Vikings, I could see that people really love him and take him there. But I think the rest of these guys are almost landing spot doesn't matter. Like, I think wherever these guys go, I think there could be spots where people like them more. But I think they're no matter where they get drafted, I think people are going to love them. And I think these guys are pretty much locked in into these top 7 or 8 picks. So if you want to get in that top tier, I think, being the top 7 or 8 is the spot to be, especially in super flex.
Yeah. And then, so then we're talking about the next tier here. We're looking at first round picks, 9 to 12. And this is just such a great draft, if you're bad at wide receiver this year. Because I think a lot of people who are, generally speaking, a lot of guys who in Dynasty, it's usually build your running back or build your wide receiver core first and build your quarterback core at the same time, get those set up and go to running back after. So if you're one of those teams who's kind of got, you're one for a couple years, all your receivers you have like Stephon Diggs and guys who did well last couple years. This is such a great draft to kind of rebuild them because you got Troy Franklin, Brian Thomas, Xavier Worthy, and Keon Coleman in this portion of the draft also. Now, these are Troy Franklin and Brian Thomas. I think whichever one of these guys lands on the Chiefs or the Bills is going to they talk about skyrocketing draft value. One of those guys will probably go in the middle of the first round instead of the end of the first round in rookie dynasty drafts for sure, because their value there, just being associated with those quarterbacks, is going to skyrocket their value.
Yeah, this is where I think you're going to start seeing a lot of differences for people, especially in mock drafts right now or rankings. These guys are all over the place. I know people that absolutely love Troy Franklin. I know people that don't. I know I've seen some guys I really look up to. They love Brian Thomas. They think he is right there in the mix to be with those top 3 guys. And I've seen other people be like, I'm not sold on him. Same thing with Xavier Worthy. Tons of top end speed out of Texas, but he's a small guy. And some people just are versed to drafting those small receivers, and they're just not sure about him. And then you got Keon Coleman, who I think is very divisive right now. I mean, he's a guy I think originally people really liked, and now people are kind of diving into his tape. They're kind of like, I'm not so sure he was as good as we thought he was. People are worried about, can he separate? The guy's a basketball player. He can go up and get the ball. He's super athletic. I mean, watching some Florida State tapes where he punt returns as a 6'4" guy punt returning. You don't see that very often, but man, the guy shook people. He made plays. I mean, he has got athletic ability. He was a basketball player at Michigan State before he transferred to Florida State, but he's a guy I've seen as the number 4 pick, and I've seen him all the way back to mid-second round as far as wide receivers go, because some people really love him. Some people really hate him. I think this is one of the most volatile groups in this draft. That landing spot, like you said, is going to make a huge difference on who takes who. Because again, you see somebody go to the Bills or the Chiefs, one of these guys might have been number 4 for them in their rankings. They might jump up to number 1 just because they're on the Bills, the Chiefs. If somebody, say you're a T-Law guy, John, I'm a T-Law guy. Say the Jags take Brian Thomas I think they're at 17, if I'm correct, right in that range. If they take Brian Thomas and Calvin Ridley goes, I can see myself talking myself into a lot of Brian Thomas shares.
You better believe it.
So that's what I'm saying. I can see him jumping up and being all over him if he goes that early. Now, say an Xavier Worthy, I've seen some mocks where he's going mid second round. And maybe you don't like the landing spot. Say he goes to like the Titans or somebody in the second round. I could see him dropping because people are like, I don't love the Titans. I don't love the landing spot. He went later than I thought. But then again, if you get Worthy, say the Chiefs fall in love with him and they take him at the end of the first round, I can see everybody being on Worthy just because he's on the Chiefs with Mahomes. So this is where I really want to look at these guys and rank them personally. Who do I like? And then slightly make that adjustment when they get drafted. Because I don't want to – I've fought in the past with I have a guy fourth in this list, and then all of a sudden I see myself wanting to take him first just because of the landing spot.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's not always the way to go. Sky Moore, people, Sky Moore. So, like, just because they go to a great team with a great QB doesn't mean that guy's going to be great. So sometimes I want to look at and say, hey, maybe if I love Xavier Worthy and he goes to the Chiefs, like that's a slam dunk. If he's my number one out of this group and he goes to the Chiefs or he goes to the Bills or whatever, then it's just solidifying what you already like.
Yeah.
But I think these guys are going to move all over the place over the next couple of months.
Yeah, the Troy Franklin, like people, they compare him to Devonta Smith because of he's so skinny, the kind of things like that. But Devonta Smith is one of my favorite receivers in the league right now. I think he's just a matter of time before AJ Brown has traded or gets another injury or something like that. And you're out, and the Slim Reaper is already somebody who I love anyway, who could be a great target even with a couple good options on the field around him. And Brian Thomas, he's 30 pounds. 30-some pounds more than Troy Franklin. That's crazy to be wide receiver. And both these guys, Troy Franklin's only 20. Brian Thomas is only 21 years old. These guys got the big thing about Brian Thomas is he's a big guy and he goes up for the ball and he's great at contested catches. He's a big dude. He kind of is a bully man, like a bully receiver kind of thing. But Troy Franklin is great all over the field. He could play in the slot. He could play in the outside. He could play everywhere. I'm not saying Brian Thomas can, but I think Brian Thomas needs a little bit more polishing, before he, becomes a better receiver. But I think both of these guys would be just a gift. I mean, even like you said, the Jaguars, I didn't even mention them, but there's a lot of teams that need receivers in the NFL, especially like at number one. And all three of these guys have all four of these guys anyway, have the potential to be a number one receiver on a team, especially the bigger. These guys are so big. They're tall guys. They're most of them are big contested catch guys, minus Keon Coleman. I think I'm a little bit worried about him because of he's not a big contested catch guy, but these Worthy's kind of he's fallen down drafts. He was earlier in the process. He was like number 2, number 3 kind of stuff like that. He seems to be falling a little bit. He was mentioned earlier with some of the other guys in the top of the draft, which I thought was a little bit crazy to begin with, but now he's fallen a lot. So, we'll find out at the combine or throughout the draft process where these guys go. But
for me, Worthy is a little bit more like Tank Dell style. Like he's a smaller guy like that, but I think because Tank Dell had so much success last year, I think that helps Worthy. Again, Jordan Addison, another guy, was pretty small, skinny frame, but performed really well for the Vikings last year. So I think that helps Worthy. So I think people aren't going to quite look so negatively on his size. I think Brian Thomas is who we wanted Chase Claypool to be. He's the guy that actually is a huge guy, but he actually uses his body.
Yeah,
he actually catches the ball at the top of the pass. He goes up and gets it, uses his height and his length to his advantage, everything that Chase Claypool doesn't do. And I think that's where, if you get him in the right situation, is Brian Thomas going to be your number one ever on your team? I think he's got the possibility, but I also think on a good team with a good QB, even if he is the number 2, I think he could put up really nice fantasy stats. He led the nation in touchdown receptions last year. So, I mean, can't take that away from him. I mean, the guy's obviously a red zone target. So he's the guy I like. Landing spot for me will matter a little bit with him, but he's a guy that I'm looking a little more on. I like probably Keon Coleman more than a lot of people do right now. Landing spot would be interesting with him. I saw him going to the Bills in a lot of drafts early in mocks, and now I'm seeing people like, oh, he's mid to late second. I don't like him at all. But again, these guys, a good showing at the combine, a good pro day, a little bit of hype, and all of a sudden these guys can move way back up people's lists. But this is going to be, I think, a fun spot to be in that late first round, kind of figure out. But I like all these guys. I think there's going to be some guys I like better than others once it's all said and done. But I think it's a really solid group. If you're still in the first round here, you can still get really good wide receivers.
This is one of those spots where it's like, hey, you go with your gut, go with what you saw, go with what you read, go with what you watched on Saturday afternoon, that go with what you think is the best player, because a lot of these guys have a lot of similarities, but we'll find out. Like landing spot dependent, we'll definitely change that. But who's next?
Yeah, so once we jump into the top of the second round, this is another one. I think we're going to see the most movement in the draft, the very end of the first round, very top of the second for fantasy drafts. I think this is where we're going to see, because of these pro days, landing spots, or where guys are going to jump up or fall back because of it. So right now on DLF, second round at 201 is quarterback Bo Nix from Oregon, 202 quarterback Michael Penix from Washington, 203 running back Braylon Allen from Wisconsin, and 204 running back Jonathan Brooks from Texas. So now in the super flex, Nix and Phoenix, these guys I think are just going to be all over the place. Right now they're going there. I could see those guys moving up to the first round depending on a good draft capital and landing spot. I could also see them plummeting. If these guys end up going like Sam Howell and some of these guys, they end up going like late third or in the fourth, the teams with actually solid QBs, I could see these guys dropping quite a bit. They are older prospects. People are all over on them. These are the guys that as a college football fan, you loved, you knew because they were in the Heisman mix all year. They put up unbelievable stats all season long. But then you get to the NFL and you realize it isn't about stats for guys in the NFL, even though that's what we're all about in fantasy football. It's not what they are in the NFL. And that's where you can see a guy like JJ McCarthy, who had nowhere near the stats that these guys have, but as a younger guy, played in a more pro style system, just didn't throw the ball as much at Michigan because they had a great O-line and great running backs and a great defense. They didn't need to throw the ball all over the place like these guys did in the Pac-12. So this is where I tell you what, right now, unless these guys get absolute fantastic landing spot, I'm probably not drafting either one of these guys, to be honest with you. I'm out on them. They're older, a little bit injury prone, especially Penix. Multiple missed seasons in college because of injury. Guy had a great college career. I'm just not sold on him at the NFL level. So unless something crazy happens with these guys, if they go in the second round, first or second round, if they're first rounders, they move up to probably the first in fantasy drafts. If they go in the second round, I could see this being like that Hendon Hooker kind of look where they're taking the guy top to mid second round. If they drop anywhere the third round or later, I can see him falling in the fantasy drafts. I really could. And this is where we're going to see, just like we talked about the end of that first round with those wide receivers, this is where we're going to see the craziness of running back. So usually where the running backs go higher, there is zero consensus on running back this year. I mean, I've seen guys that are ranked 8th or 9th in one list actually ranked 2nd or 3rd in another list. I've seen guys that are like 1 or 2 on a list way back, not even in a top 10. So, I mean, people have their favorites for sure right now. Landing spot and draft capital is going to matter probably more for running backs outside of the QB position than anything. I think a lot of these wide receivers, it will matter a little bit where they get drafted, but they're still going to be drafted in the same range just because that's the talent they have. But these running backs could be all over the place. I think this is where you're going to see a lot of them go off the board unless we see just phenomenal landing spot and someone get drafted in the 2nd or 3rd round to just a great landing spot. Then I could see some of these running backs maybe sneaking in to the end of that first round, maybe 110, 111, 112. But I think this is where you're going to start seeing them coming off the board. John, right now, Braylon Allen, Jonathan Brooks, both in the mix. Brooks coming off the ACL tear with the Texans, but everything says things are moving along. He had surgery. He should be back for the start of the season. He's going to miss some summer workouts, but he should be back for training camp. So that's a great sign for him. He's the young guy, only 20. Braylon Allen, the biggest thing for him, everybody loves big size. The guy is super young. He's still only 19, I think. Going to be 20 by the time the draft hits. This super young guy, but people are worried about, he got enough juice in him. Can he catch the ball? I know a lot of people that love Braylon Allen. He's number 1 on their list.
Yes.
I know other people that he's number 7 on their list. Same with Brooks. I know people that love Brooks as 1, and I know people are like, he's probably 4 or 5 for me.
Yeah, this is a funny area because, like you said, Nix and Penix, both these guys, they didn't do much where they originally started at. You know, Nix, what was he at Auburn before that?
He was at Auburn,
and he went to, just blew up when he got to Oregon. You know, and the same thing with Penix too. He went to Indiana 4 seasons. He like doubled all of his passing stats like when he was with when he got to Washington. So I don't know. Is it the receivers that made these guys good? Was it the the system that they were in wasn't. They're inconsistent. That's why they have such inconsistent draft capital, or presumed, inconsistent draft capital right now in these mocks and evaluations and stuff. But my favorite running back out of this whole my favorite running back that we're talking about here is Braylon Allen. I just think he's a big dude. I think he's what like Roschon Johnson. Well, we wanted Roschon Johnson to be last year, kind of like it would never really kind of panned out. But I think Allen's a goal line back. He runs pretty well. He catches the ball out of the backfield. You can see he's got kind of soft hands, and when he catches the ball, he gets down to business real fast. He doesn't mess around. He gets downfield. His big problem is his pass blocking, and a lot of people say all the time, who cares? You're a running back in order to pass block. It is important to keep your quarterback healthy. We've seen guys get pulled off the field plenty of times for not pass blocking. Jonathan Brooks, a guy this is presumed. That's why he's going so high right now. He's presumed to be the number one PPR back in the league because of his catch, because of receiving ability. So that's fine. That's good. And he's still a good running back. And nobody's expecting him to come in, and they know it's going to be a transition in year one because of his injuries before. He's going to come in kind of slow, but they think that his potential long-term is the best running back in his class. And I'm okay with that. I just favor bigger guys. I'm a bigger, I want a guy who can catch the ball. I want a guy who can be a goal line back. I want a guy who can run between the tackles. I want someone who can do everything, not just be a wide receiver out of the backfield, as we saw this year with the Buccaneers. Having a running back that can catch 1,000 passes is super important in fantasy football. But not every league has its full PPR. You have to look at that too. What's your league style? What do you get points for? Do you get no? Is it points per first down? Is it points per carry? Is it points per reception? Like, there's all those included. Allen's going to get a hand, depending on where he goes, where Braylon Allen goes. He's going to get a handful of receptions too, depending on if he's going to be the starter somewhere. Which, if he's drafted pretty high, he will be. But those are all situations you got to take for granted when you're drafting. And obviously, the draft capital. Where do they go? What if Brooks goes somewhere with a good running back in front of him because they know he's going to sit around for a year or two? Mm-hmm. And what if Braylon Allen gets drafted to a team like let's just say the Raiders or somebody else, or the Giants or the Cowboys or something like that, where he's probably start right away? What happens then? Where do these guys go? Their fluctuation for landing spot and draft capital, draft position anyway, is all over the place. Also, this is kind of the first weird tier that we're in right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, John, we got, if you want to pull up a couple of the comments, we had some comments about Bo Nix and stuff from the Mouth podcast.
You know what that is?
Yes, sir.
It's Tim George.
I know. Tim, he said, do you want to pull? He was talking about Bo Nix. He thinks he's got to be in a West Coast offense, which I agree. I think Tim is totally correct on that. West Coast offense is where he's got to be. He just showed he needs to be able to throw those quick passes underneath. That was his entire game at Oregon. So that's saying. Also saying Bo Nix could be Kirk Cousins of the draft 5 years from now. I agree. I actually think, where Nix lands is going to be important for me. Like I said, if he ends up in a good spot, maybe he goes in the third round, and he goes in the third round to, say, the Vikings to back up Kirk Cousins. I would definitely be higher on Nix if that's what happened. If he's in that spot where he could do that, because he's a guy, Kirk Cousins, obviously was taking the same thing. RG3, same draft, kind of crazy, but he ended up being the better guy. RG3 got hurt, and Kirk Cousins put a good career together. So I definitely think either of these guys could be put a solid career. I think Nix probably, for me, has the most upside if he's in the right system with the right coaching. That's where I think he can kind of make it happen.
Absolutely. Thanks for the comments. Thanks for watching.
I appreciate you throwing that out there for us. But yeah, John, if we get back to RBs, like I said, the landing spots are going to be gigantic for these guys. We'll talk about the next group here too, because there's a few guys in this next group. Second round picks 5 through 8. Blake Corum, running back, Michigan at 2.5. Ladd McConkey, wide receiver, Georgia at 2.6. Trey Benson, running back, Florida State at 2.7. And A.D. Mitchell, wide receiver, Texas at 2.8. Trey Benson and Corum are right in that mix with Allen and Brooks for me. I've seen those guys go as high as 2.1 into the first round. And then I've seen them drop all the way to the end of the second. I'm a Trey Benson guy, to be honest with you. I love Trey Benson. He's my number one guy in this, unless he just gets an absolute horrible landing spot. Would probably affect whether he's the first running back I take off the board. But right now, I like him. He's got a lot of tread on the tires. Came off an injury from Oregon, transferred to Florida State. They didn't use him as much as I'd love to see him. I have him in some C2C and CFF leagues. I wish they would have used him a little bit more. I think he has nice hands, soft hands. He catches well in the backfield. I think he's got a low center of gravity where he can bounce off tacklers. A guy had a ton of force missed tackles
Zero
this year
fumbles
in college,
28
and
games in
0
college.
fumbles. Yeah. So he's a guy I like a ton. I just think his game translates to the NFL, especially when no one's going, almost no one's going full on, workhorse back. I think Benson's a guy that can fit in either way as a first and second round down guy, or as kind of a third down back. I think he can fit both. So I really like Benson. He's the guy I'm targeting right here. If I got to pick at the early second round, if Benson gets to me, more than likely I'm taking Benson in the early part of the second round. I just like him a lot. He's my guy there. Brooks, I like. Obviously, coming off the injuries is a little question mark. You never know. But again, if Brooks ends up going to say the Cowboys, a lot of people said the Cowboys have really liked him. He goes in the second round of the Cowboys. I could see him sneaking in the first round of drafts. I could definitely see people liking him. Braylon Allen, he's kind of in the Drake May spot right now in the fantasy world. People are comparing him to A.J. Dillon, and they are comparing him in a bad way to A.J. Dillon. They don't like A.J. Dillon, and they're saying he's just going to be another A.J. Dillon who's going to he's going to be a decent player. He'll give you some stuff, but you can't ever count on in fantasy. That's where his knock is, kind of like Drake May's kind of getting hit by a lot of people saying, he's just another Mitch Trubisky. He's Sam Howell. He's not a top 5 guy. But I like Braylon Allen. The knock on him was no catching ability, but that was more Wisconsin just never threw the ball to the running backs. It wasn't part of their game plan. Got a new coaching staff this year, and he did catch the ball out of the backfield. I'd have to look it up and see exactly how many catches he had this year, but I know he was in double digits. So he definitely caught the ball. He actually looked decent catching the ball. He's a guy that people are going to be intrigued of just because he's so young. He's big and so young. Now, Braylon Allen, he's a guy, if he somehow goes to the combine, and I haven't seen whether he's actually going to work out and do his things. If I'm him, I am.
Say it. Come on. Give me that 4 or 5.
If he puts in a high 4.4s or like right at 4.5 with his size, and he goes out and shows a nice standing broad jump and a quick 3-cone drill, man, I could see people loving him. I really could, because he could answer a lot of those questions. He catches the ball. If he looks smooth catching swing passes out of the backfield on drills, I could see him moving up to a lot of people, because a lot of guys I know, like I said, a lot of people have him 1 and Brooks 1. I'm in the minority. I've got Trey Benson 1, but I've got a few guys that are with me on the Trey Benson train there. So I just think it's really going to matter there. And I think Blake Corum, he's a guy people were not super high on, but he was just ultra productive in college. People are a little worried about how fast he is. Maybe he's not the breakaway speed guy that everybody wants, but man, he's shown he can get the hard yards, even though he's not very big. He's a guy, say the Chargers take him in the second round or the third round, even if he goes in the third round of the Chargers, people are going to be like, oh, he's the Chargers starting running back. I mean, Jim Harbaugh loves him. He's going to be the number 1 running back for the Chargers, and he's going to be 112. I'm telling you right now, if somehow the Chargers take him, he'll sneak into the first round, because people will be convinced that he's the number 1 there. I'm not. He's a guy I like. I really liked him when he was going into the second round, beginning of the third round earlier in the offseason here. But he has moved up to the top of the second round now. And so that scares me just a little. Not top of the second round, but about mid-second round. I really liked him late, early third round. But he's a guy, again, just a touchdown machine in college, played with a great O-line. I think he's a guy that could end up being a solid back, even if he's not spectacular and doesn't put a ton of game-breaking plays on film. I just think he could be a solid guy. So I think all those guys are going to be right in that mix.
And he's 3 years older than some of the running backs that we're talking about earlier also.
That's the other thing. There's a lot of running backs in this spot that you're going to have to look, and people are going to be like, do I want the 20-year-old or do I want the 23, 24-year-old where I maybe only get one contract out of him before we cut him after his rookie contract? He's a guy. I'll bring up 2 more guys, even though they're not in the list right now here, just to kind of jump ahead. Bucky Irvin, running back from Oregon's in the next list right now on DLF at the end of the second round, but he's the guy I've seen people have in the top 2 or 3. And another guy that I think he's gaining a little momentum, Ray Davis, running back out of Kentucky. He's a guy that was at Vanderbilt, transferred to Kentucky, put up great things. As Tim's with me on this one, he said Ray Davis. He likes Ray Davis as well. I've seen quite a few people have Ray Davis as high as number 2 in this draft. He's a guy that was going late 4th round in a lot of mocks early on. People weren't on him, but the hype's starting to get around him. People are starting to like him. Kentucky was not real good this year, and he still was a beast for them. And he caught the ball in the backfield and looked pretty good doing it. Right now, if you look at it, he's all the way at the mid-3rd round, while Bucky Irvin's at the end of the 2nd. But I could see both those guys jumping into that early to mid-2nd round conversation if they end up in a good situation. If Ray Davis gets drafted in, like, say, the 4th round by the Ravens, I can see Ray Davis really jumping up. People be like, oh, Ravens need an RB. He could fit the mold. Even if he goes in the 4th round, he's not a 2nd or 3rd round. I could see him getting picked up by people just because they love the landing spot on the Ravens. So he's the guy's a hard-nosed runner. He's got really good size. He's about 5'10", 5'11", if I'm pretty sure. He's about 220 in there. So, like, I think we're going to see a lot of guys move around as far as running backs are concerned, because I don't think there's any consensus on the NFL side, John.
No,
I think you're going to have teams absolutely love certain guys, and they're going to be out on other guys, and then it's going to be that way depending on your system, how you run, what you do. It's just going to be really interesting. I mean, I've seen people talk to Jonathan Brooks to say him going to the Packers. Is that a good or bad thing? Is he sit behind Aaron Jones for a year, kind of play second half of the season, and then maybe they get rid of Jones and he takes over? You know, maybe you like that spot. Maybe you don't. If you think Aaron Jones has got a couple years left in him, he is 30 years old, but, you know, we have seen some guys be able to get past that 28, 29 mark and still actually produce. As he was banged up last year, but he looked really good at the end of the season. So,
yeah. I mean, I just feel like the landing spots for the Ravens and the Chargers are just like whoever lands there is just going to be like the CEH going to
everybody's going to be like, oh, we got to take him. Got to take him.
There's landing spot dependent. I'm not going to say dependent. It's just such a great opportunity to see it, especially a quarterback that likes to dump off, you know, or a running quarterback like Lamar who could just hide the ball so well and, you know, cause such a distraction with the linebacker core. It's easy to hide a running back, and it gives them such an opportunity to gain yards before they realize who has the ball, kind of, you know, situation. So,
yeah, and we'll jump in here, and we didn't really talk about Ladd McConkey and A.D. Mitchell, but we'll talk about them with this next group that's up here. So picks 9 through 12 in the second round, 2-9, Xavier Legette, wide receiver, South Carolina. We just talked about Bucky Brooks, 2-10, 2-11, Jalen Polk, wide receiver, Washington, 2-12. We see the next tight end come off the board, Jatavion Sanders from Texas. John, this is kind of where you get that third set of wide receivers coming in. You got Ladd McConkey, you got A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Legette, Jalen Polk. These guys have been all over the place right now. I mean, all over the place. I've done mock drafts. I told you where I was getting Jalen Polk at the very end of the third round. And I had ones where if I didn't take Xavier Legette at the end of the first round, I wasn't getting him. And now he's kind of dropped a little bit. He's kind of a one-hit wonder. The metrics guys hate him because it took him to a 5th year to break out. He's an older receiver. They list him at 6'3". He's really about 6'1". He's 220. Still got good speed, though. He's a guy I like. I'm taking a chance on, and especially I'm taking a chance on him if he gets to this late second round. Am I stretching to take him early in the second? I don't know about that. I'm not sure. But at this spot, end of the second, I'd be all over Legette. Like I said, I love Jalen Polk at the end of the third. Starting to look like that's going to be a pipe dream. You're going to have to get him sometime in the second. McConkey's a guy. People are, I've seen McConkey go late first round. I've seen him be in that Troy Franklin worthy mix. But right now, currently, he's going 2-6. And then A.D. Mitchell. Some people love him. Was at Georgia before he went to Texas. He's a tall, skinny, kind of lanky guy, but great speed. He's another one. I've seen people absolutely love him. They think he should be in that tier 2, and I've seen other people say he's at the bottom of tier 3 for me. So I think all those middle, that second round, I think you're going to see a lot of talent. There's going to be running backs there, and there's going to be that third tier of wide receivers that I still think, even though they're technically tier 3, I think there's a lot of talent in there. The question is just who do you like best and who can you get there? And then Jatavian Sanders, I think landing spot's going to be interesting for him if he's on an offense that's pretty creative and can get him the ball, because he's not your typical size for a tight end either, kind of like Brock Bowers. The guy is crazy athletic, was really good at Texas. He's a guy that feels like he's going to be a better pro than he was in college,
Right.
if he gets on a team that uses him right. So he's a guy, if I'm in a tight end premium, fairly high tight end premium, and I need some tight end youth, I wouldn't even hate taking Sanders at the beginning of the second.
No,
I would totally be on him, taking him early in the second.
After like McConkey went and probably, you know, after McConkey went and I really wouldn't have a problem taking Jatavian Sanders over Jalen Polk or over Xavier Leggett for sure. Probably over Bucky Irving also. Like I don't, especially if it's tight end premium, a big tight end premium, I'd reach on a tight end here, because where's the next tight end fall? You're probably not even until the end of the fourth round. You're looking at, like, you know, I don't even know where it's at. Probably not. Yeah, probably
it's a huge drop off between Sanders and the next guy. It's a real. I like last year's tight end class was one of my favorite tight end classes in a long time. I love the guys at the top of this class, but you're taking real dart throws after these top two.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I guess that's the point of my whole ramble over there, was that it's, if you don't take a guy like Jatavian Sanders right now, you're really just kind of like going for a tight end like 14 to 28 or something, like the rest of the league. You're not going to get it's at that point in time. You might as well just throw a dart at the board and see and start whoever's on your roster, because it doesn't matter. They're touchdown dependent at that point in time. But so let's go over this exercise right now. You're on the board right now. You take Blake Corum or Jatavian Sanders in a big tight end premium.
If it's a decent tight end premium, I'm taking Sanders over Blake.
Ladd McConkey.
I'm taking Sanders over Ladd McConkey.
I like Ladd McConkey a lot, man.
I like Ladd McConkey too. He's another one of those guys that I don't know if he is dependent on where he lands as some of these other guys. I just feel like he could fit a lot of systems and he could be really good. I just think he's the guy that ends up moving up the board. I think he was injured last year and he played injured, even though he played pretty well when he was injured with a back injury. If he shows out in some of these drills and runs a really fast 40 time and shows the hands that most people have seen, I mean, they had a lot of really good players on Georgia's team last year, and he was, outside of Bowers, he was their best wide receiver. So I think, you know, I can see him jumping to the end of that first round. I'm telling you, I really could. If a team loves him and takes him in the end of the first round, if he goes the end, again, we talk about it, if he goes the end of the first round to the Chiefs, he's a first round pick. He's going to go in the first round of your. There's no question he's going right at the middle to the end of the first round of your fantasy draft.
He's just such a good separator. He's such a good route runner, such a good sticky hands guy, such a good everything. Plus, they use him in a lot of like the gimmick plays too. So he's one of those guys. He could do anything on the field. I think, as far as that goes, he's just an all around good athlete, good receiver.
Yeah, and I think people are going to be either in on Leggett or out. I mean, I don't think there's going to be any in between. You're going to have the analytics guys who absolutely hate him. They're like, I'm not taking any chance. I don't care where he falls. I think he's a gigantic bust. You know, you like your guy, Jonathan Mingo. People are comparing him to Jonathan Mingo. I actually think he's better than Jonathan Mingo, and I know you like Mingo. So I actually like Leggett. He's a guy that I'm willing to take a risk on, especially in the late second round. If I can get him there, I definitely want him. Polk, like I said, I absolutely loved in the third round. It's looking like if I want him more and more, I'm going to have to take him with my second rounder. He's not going to get to me in the third. And so he's one of the, again, I think you could see, you'll see leagues where Leggett falls in the middle of the third. I think you absolutely will. But if you like him, you better not wait and hope it happens. You're going to have to take him in the second. I just think that's, unless he just plummets in the NFL draft. If Leggett goes in like the fourth or fifth round, now he's going to fall in your mock drafts. But if he gets 8 even in the first 2 days, he gets draft capital, I think he's a guy that's going to be in that mix.
Don't be surprised if you see most of these guys go before Michael Penix and Bo Nix also in most of your drafts. It could definitely happen that way.
Absolutely. I can see all these guys moving up because, again, I can see these quarterbacks falling depending on what happens. Let's jump into the third round. Beginning of the third round, picks 1 through 4. 301, Devontae Walker, wide receiver, North Carolina. 302, running back, Audric Esame.
Let's go, Irish.
I know. I knew you'd love that one. 303, Malachi Corley, wide receiver, Western Kentucky. 304, wide receiver, Roman Wilson, Michigan. Now, this is another group that I think is really interesting. I estimate right now here at 3-2, I've got people that like him as a top 4 guy. That really think he is one of the guys in that mix. He's another guy, man, put him on the Ravens. People will go nuts for him. I like him. I think he's underrated. He's a bigger guy, but I think he's got a little more juice than people think he does. So again, a really nice combine will work for him. And here's the other thing, John. We anybody who follows fantasy and dynasty is kind of talked about this over the last year or two. Guys getting picked in the 4th or 5th round as a running back is not the death nail it used to be.
Not anymore.
It's not. Like, a guy in the 4th round is going to get a shot. A guy taken in the 4th round or 5th round of the NFL draft as a running back is going to get a shot to play. And we've seen it. Ton of injuries. All it takes is one guy to go down and for you to get an opportunity. So this is where, I love piling these guys up and taking, if I've got multiple 3rd round picks and some of these RBs drop, this is where I'd be all over jumping whatever guys drop to me, because I'd be like, hey, I'm going to swing as many of these guys as possible and see if one of them hits. Estimate is a guy I like. This wide receiver core, same thing. I've seen Malachi Corley go early to mid-second. People are a little down on him of late. They're just not 100% sure what he can do at the next level. So he's dropped to this early 3rd. Roman Wilson, wow. He's another one of those with J.J. McCarthy. If he puts a good showing on at the combine this week, I think he jumps up. I've seen some big names in the industry that love Roman Wilson. I've got a couple people I saw this week have him number 5 right now, wide receiver in their rankings. If he's number 5, he's going in the end of the first round, beginning of the second round. He's a guy that could go that high. Again, his production in college wasn't high because Michigan just didn't throw the ball a bunch, but he's showing some pretty good skills. I know some people that really love him. If he goes to the Bears and say the Bears skip out on wide receiver early and they take a Roman Wilson in the 2nd round, I've got people like, oh, I'd be all over him. I'm taking him early if he goes to the Bears in the 2nd round and they skip early wide receivers. I could see something like that happening. I like Roman Wilson a lot. He's a guy that's rising for me. Walker's a guy that's actually falling for me. I didn't love what I saw out of him at the Senior Bowl. He had some drops. He had some contested catches that he just did not do a good job fighting through and trying to get back to the ball. The story is crazy with him sitting, but half the season NCAA reasons, stuff like that. But I know people that love him. He's a guy that, unless he just absolutely plummets in my drafts to me, I'm probably not taking him. I mean, if I'm at the end of the 3rd and he falls all the way there, maybe I'm grabbing him. But I'm probably taking a shot on like an Estimate or a Ray Davis, one of these other running backs. If they get to me in the 3rd, sure, I'm probably taking a shot on one of them over him. Roman Wilson's probably my favorite guy in this group. I actually think Roman Wilson's going to be more in that Polk Leggett area. I think he'll move up and be kind of maybe even ahead of both of those guys and be in that tier 3 wide receiver by the time it's all said and done. And then Corley's a guy that people are going to either like or dislike. I like Corley depending on where he ends up. If it's an offense I like, I'm more likely to take him early. If it's not an offense I like, he could drop for me. He was going in the 2nd round. Now he's all the way in the 3rd.
Who's Western Kentucky's mascot?
They're the Hilltoppers.
I couldn't remember what.
And if you're a big helmet guy, I'm a big helmet guy. They actually did different helmet logos with the Hilltopper. It's he looks like a red blob. It's crazy. But they had different stuff where he was catching a ball. He was handing it off. He was throwing the ball. It was crazy. Kind of a cool thing if you just go online and you look up Hilltoppers helmets. They got some kind of crazy cool ones in there for all you helmet freaks like me.
Helmet freaks, yeah. I just wanted to throw about Tez Walker. Like, I just think that he needs to be a slot receiver in the NFL. He's not gonna be an outside guy. And his Senior Bowl kind of like tanked his value a little bit as far as not being able to get any separation and dropping a couple balls. But that's it is what it is. I mean, it doesn't mean it's not the death sentence because you had a bad Senior Bowl, but at the same time, it's it's something to be said about it. Us, the ranker people, move people up and down because of a couple bad performances on one day of their life, but. You got a couple years of performance in college to look at besides one day at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, and Walker, I don't dislike Walker. I just think I like other guys better than him. He's a guy I would take. Like I said, I would take him if he falls to me. If I have a late 3rd round pick and he falls to me, I'm taking him. If I'm picking at the top of the 3rd, end of the 2nd, I just like a lot of these other guys sitting here more than him.
There's guys in the next tier I'd take before him, but that's all I'm saying.
And I agree with you, John. And let's talk about that next tier. Round 3, picks 5 to 8. 305 QB Spencer Rattler from South Carolina. 306 running back Marshawn Lloyd from USC. 307 wide receiver Jalen McMillan, Washington. And 308 running back Ray Davis, Kentucky. We've already talked a little bit about Ray Davis there. So, like Ray Davis a ton. To me, if he gets in the 3rd round, him and Estime, I am definitely looking to pick up either one of those guys, regardless of landing spot. I just think those guys can make it in the NFL. Jalen McMillan's a guy that's going to be interesting. He was originally up with a Dunze and ahead of Jalen Polk, but he got banged up last year, fell down some people's drafts. It'll be interesting to see kind of where he goes if teams really like him more than Polk, if they like him less than Polk. I know before he got banged up last year, the year before, people were saying he was a 1st round, 2nd round wide receiver in the real NFL draft. So seeing where he goes, I think could be interesting. And then Marshawn Lloyd is another one of those. He's a guy that right now is going at 3-6 in the 3rd round. I know people that like him as their number 1 or number 2 back in this draft. And that's why I'm saying this running back class is all over the place. And that's why, for me, I want as many dart throws at running back as possible. If I've got a bunch of 2nd, 3rd round picks, I am going to trade for those, and I'm just going to take all of them. I'm going to take everybody and hope one of them or 2 of them are even decent, because I think a lot of these guys have a shot.
I got like 8 3rd round picks in our league doing we're with the Babies and Boomers League. So I can't.
Nice.
I had no running back at all. I'm like,
I'm going to take every one of them. I'm thinking everyone. And why not? I think it's a great spot where you can get some of these guys. I like Lloyd. People like his receiving profile. He was pretty good. Spencer Rattler's another one of those. He's at 3.5 right here just because I think he's kind of in a tier of his own. But if somebody really likes Spencer Rattler, and say Spencer Rattler, Bo Nix, and Penix all go like in the 3rd round, I could see a ton of people taking Rattler over those other 2 guys just because, his profile coming out of high school was, top end. He was on the show QB1. He went to Oklahoma, ended up getting beat out by Caleb Williams, and he transferred. But I know guys that love him and think that he technically is a better QB than Drake May and Jalen Daniels. So if he gets a decent landing spot, I can see with somebody taking him. If I'm in a 2 QB league over a super flex, I'm probably taking a shot at him maybe in this mid-3rd round. It's going to be tough unless he gets drafted somewhere I really like for me to take him, just because for me, I want to take the shot at a Ray Davis, a Marshawn Lloyd, an Audric Estime. I want to take a shot at one of those guys here in this 3rd.
Yeah, but I mean, in reality, would you, let's say you had the option and it was between like somebody with the I don't want to say the pedigree. Would you take Spencer Rattler over Michael Penix?
Possibly.
I could see myself doing that.
I could totally do it, depending on where he lands and where they get drafted.
Right.
Rattler just feels like a guy that could have a longer career.
Right. That's what I'm thinking.
Be a flash in the pan and have a good season or 2 coming in for somebody. Yes, in the right moment, I think he can. Is he a guy that's going to be a 5 to 10 year starter in the NFL? I don't see it. Could Rattler? I could see Rattler being one of those guys that's sneaky. Tim brought up earlier, he said, hey, could Bo Nix be the Kirk Cousins? I think there's a lot of people that say, could Spencer Rattler be Kirk Cousins?
Exactly.
Could he be a guy that ends up went through some tough stuff in college, went from being the man to having to fight his way back. Could he be that guy? Because he does have the skills, and he got off to a crazy good start at South Carolina last year.
Yeah.
He ran into some rough games later in the season, but man, he got off to a dynamic start for them. He's definitely a guy I could see myself taking if he ends up in the right situation. And I'm a guy who loves to handcuff my QBs. If he gets drafted in a decent spot as the backup to one of the guys I have, I'm probably definitely taking him in this third round.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, look at the guy who was supposed to be 101 overall, just a year ago. So I mean,
a couple of years ago, yeah. If you were in Debbie 2 years ago, people were talking about him, being the top guy. So I definitely think in that range. John, you ready to jump to the end of the third round here?
Let's go.
All right, last part of the third round here. Picks 9 through 12. 309, running back Will Shipley, Clemson. 310, wide receiver Ricky Pearsall, Florida. 311, running back Jalen Wright, Tennessee. And 312, wide receiver Brendan Rice, USC. So again, now we're kind of taking some of those guys, taking some guys that maybe didn't have great college careers, but have the skill set. Brendan Rice, obviously best known as Jerry Rice's son, 49er great. He's the guy, they had a lot of guys at USC. He had some really good games. He had some games he didn't do much, but people like his size. Ricky Pearsall, the speed, people really liking him. Florida wasn't a great throwing team the last couple of years, but he's the guy that I've seen kind of move up people's drafts. Will Shipley, I think, is going to be one of those guys kind of all over the place. He was solid at Clemson. People liked him. I just don't see the buzz behind him as some of these other guys. It'll be interesting what the NFL thinks about him. I'm not in love with Shipley. He's probably one of the running backs I'm avoiding. If he got to me in the fourth round, I'd possibly take him, but I'm probably not taking him here. And the third, and then Jalen Wright. Again, it feels like I've said this 5 times in this podcast, but he's another guy that I've seen people have him as RB1. I have seen people with him as RB1. I saw him mocked in the late first round, early second round as the first running back off the board in a mock the other day. So it's crazy to see where these GMs actually see this guy. I mean, you've got a guy going 311 right now that other people are talking about going as the top running back in the draft. Some people absolutely love Wright from Tennessee.
Yeah, he's only 200 pounds. I mean, that might be a little bit, that might even be a little bit great. What do you call it? Gracious, whatever. You even say that. But he's only got 4 touchdowns.
I think people think he could be Devin and Shane. That's what I think. Right. So that's to me, when I see people say they love him, that's what I think. I'm like, do you think he's going to have that impact? And that's why you love him so much. He's a guy quick. I like. I'm not taking him in my top 5. I can tell you that right now. I'm taking these other guys. If he drops to mid third round, like I said, Estime, him, Ray Davis, I'm probably taking Ray Davis in the second. Personally, I would love to get him in the third. I don't think he's going to actually end up getting there. And I like him enough that I would probably overdraft him. But all the rest of these guys in the third, I would take a shot at any of them that got to me.
Yeah, Wright would be my last of all the names you said for sure on that short list. But I think Wright is just such a quick, fast player that people think that the explosion is just going to happen in the NFL. And that, for a guy who runs, if you ever see the guy, he kind of runs up high, and that's not good for a kind of a smaller dude, a skinnier guy. So. Not that he's Eric Dickerson or nothing like that, but I mean, you gotta when you're initiating contact, sometimes you have to play a little bit lower when you're when you only weigh less than 200 pounds.
Yeah, so that's our top 3 rounds, John. Kind of going back through it for everybody. Now let's jump in. I kind of broke down wide receivers, running backs, tight ends, QBs. Some of the guys are kind of left over. Some guys I kind of personally want to maybe take a shot at in the 4th and 5th rounds. A lot of people, those draft picks. So I've had leagues. Why do we even draft to the 5th round? It doesn't matter. Nobody, these guys, I'm like, I want to draft as many players as I can possibly draft. I love the draft. I love the rookie draft. I want to take shots on guys. I want to see if some of these guys hit. I mean, people said it didn't matter. And then Puka Nacua was getting taken in the 3rd and 4th round last year in leagues. So it matters. If you paid attention, it matters. So I'll start with wide receivers. I know Tim, before he jumped off, said one of his big sleepers, a guy he really likes, is Javon Baker, the wide receiver from Central Florida, former Alabama guy that transferred. He's a guy shooting up draft boards. People are really liking him. I watched some tape on him the other day. Right now, he's 4th or 5th round. I absolutely could see an NFL team falling in love with him and him jumping way up in mock drafts. I think he could get himself even possibly up to that second round where Polk and some of those other guys are. I think he could be in that mix. And I think they're going to have guys in your league that like him that much that they'll take him there, even though currently he's being mocked in like the 4th or 5th round. Javon Baker, another guy like another Alabama guy, Jermaine Burton. He ended up at Alabama. I think he was at Georgia originally, if I'm correct. He's another guy, like the talent is all off the charts. He didn't have great production in college, but I know a lot of people still really like him. He's a guy that I'm definitely looking at to take a flyer on if he gets to me far enough in the draft. A guy that I've seen all over the place is Jacob Cowing from Arizona. He's a slot guy. He's
Small.
a guy that he's real small. He was at USC before he went to Arizona. The big knock on him is people are like, I don't know if he does anything that great. He's like decent at everything, but he's not really good or great at anything. That's kind of his knock. He's a guy I like, though. I feel like if he got in the right situation, that he could end up being a decent guy. Early on in the process, I saw him late second, early third. He's kind of started to drop now. As you saw this, he's kind of maybe sneaking in that 4th round. I've seen him, mid 3rd round. So he's another guy into the 3rd. If I like him, depending on who's still there, he's a guy I like. And a 5th round flyer that not a lot of people are taking that I like personally, just because I saw a lot of them in college, was Isaiah Williams, wide receiver from Illinois. Converted quarterback who ended up going to wide receiver. Guy's got decent size, 5'11", 185, good speed. He was a playmaker for Illinois this year with not a great passing game. He's a guy that I'm probably taking a shot on in the 5th round if he gets to me. He's a total dart throw, but he's the guy I could see carving out a little bit of space on a team and could be pretty good. So any wideouts you like, John, kind of are there any of these guys that I brought up that you kind of are leaning towards in the 4th and 5th round?
No, this is the area of my drafts when I usually do running backs and tight ends. I don't bother with wide receivers in this area. So I don't, like Johnny Wilson is somebody that people have been mentioning and things like that. Guy that plays like that.
Johnny Wilson, if he moves the tight end, would be very interesting. Great size, 6'7". Right. He's about 235, 240. If he officially ends up moving to tight end and you get somebody that can work with him, I love the idea of taking him and stashing him on a taxi squad and seeing what he can produce. He right now in DLF drafts, he's just outside of that 3rd round. He's just barely in the 4th round. So he's a guy, I like him more if he moves to tight end. I feel like he could be a more useful player, especially in tight end premium, if he gets to tight end. Because right now he kind of feels like a Hakeem Butler to me, and the old Iowa State player that people really loved in fantasy circles, but just never ever made it in the pros. Got drafted by the Cardinals and just kind of never did anything. He's been pretty good in the XFL, though. I will say that the last year. But if Johnny Wilson moves a tight end, I kind of like that.
I do too. That's kind of why I'm interested in him, just because of that reason.
Well, let's talk tight ends then, since we talked about this. Like we said, there's a pretty big drop-off after Bowers and Sanders. I'm probably not drafting anyone until the 4th round. The guys I like, Cade Stover from Ohio State was pretty solid this year across the middle. I liked what he did there. I think he could be a good pro. Jaheim Bell from Florida State, he's a tweener of all tweeners. The guy's about 230, maybe 235. I mean, he's kind of like a Johnny Wilson on that Florida State. They had a lot of guys that are tweeners. If he ends up on a team that can figure out how to use him correctly, I think he could end up being that big H-back / second tight end / tight end there. They kind of move out and play him, so he's not in line. He's a guy I like Bell. I think he's got athleticism. I'm willing to take a shot on him just because I love the athleticism. I don't know where he fits for a lot of the NFL guys, but he's a guy I like in there. Theo Johnson from Penn State. We know Penn State can get guy. He's got the best size of anyone probably in this class. I could see him getting really high NFL draft capital.
That's who I'm targeting.
I figured he would be your guy, John.
He's 100% my guy because he's big, he's physical, he catches the ball. Yeah, he had 7 touchdowns this year, man. The guy's, of course, he's my guy. He's 6'7", like 270 pounds or 265 or something like that. He's a big dude. He can play over the field. He's a pretty good route runner, and he blocks well. Yeah, I'll take Theo Johnson for sure.
Yeah, I just think he's like Britton Strange, who nobody really saw coming and got taken in the second round by the Jags last year. So I think he's up there. And then I also think another guy I'm going to keep an eye on is Ben Sinnett, tight end from Kansas State. I will take a flyer on him in the 5th round if he gets to me. John, you want to read what we got from Drew here? John's on.
Javon Baker's my 23rd overall player in Superflex right now. I'm sorry, I've been coughing. I've been, sorry, I coughed.
Yeah, you're good, John. You're good.
So I will be one of those people taking him too high. LOL. That's okay. Like we said before, there's no wrong way. There's no wrong way to eat a Reese's. It's kind of how that works. If this is your guy, then go ahead and take your guy because he who laughs loudest is what everybody says. When you trust the process, your own process, and you pick the right guy because that's who you wanted, that's who you saw, that's who you believed in. The biggest thing is we're not here just to field the team of whoever thinks is the best players. You want to feel the team of who you like, the guys who, you want to draft the guys that you saw coming, the guys who you watched your entire career, the guys their entire career, the guys you want on your team. You want a whole dynasty team of good players who you got from the beginning that you trust, that you like, and you enjoy having on your fantasy football roster. That's the way I look at this kind of stuff.
Yeah, John, I totally agree with you. I mean, I have no problem throwing him in that mix in the 2nd round with McConkey, Mitchell, Leggett, Polk. I think he could be in there. And my thing is, if you like him, go get him. The thing I hate, and John, I'm sure you're the same way as me. I hate having regret where I'm trying to play the ADP game and I'm trying to wait till where he's supposed to be taken. And then somebody snipes me and I'm like, I know I should have just taken him in the last round. Why was I doing that? Why was I waiting around to get the best possible ADP? Why didn't I take the guy I wanted when I wanted him? So I think that's, that's a good point Drew brought up. Hey, if Baker's your guy, take him in the 2nd round. Don't worry about taking him early 2nd, early 3rd round, late 2nd round. If that's where your draft pick falls and you can't move a guy, take him there. I don't think there's any problem taking a guy around earlier than his ADP just because that's the guy you like better than a bunch of other guys. I think that's a great point there by Drew. Yes. Let's talk about running backs. The other guys I haven't got to yet here. This 4th, 5th round, there's some sneaky guys in here that I like that I could see getting some good PT in the right situations. Frank Gore Jr. for Southern Miss. I love Frank Gore Jr. for Southern Miss. Cody Schrader, Missouri.
There you go.
Led the SEC in rushing. Led the SEC in rushing. The guy, you look at him and you're like, he shouldn't be as good as he is. He shouldn't be as productive he is. But the man was actually the engine that made Missouri go this year. I think he could find the guy's willing to do anything. He absolutely loves football. Former D2 player, believed in himself enough to leave the D2 team he led the nation in rushing and walk on at Missouri because that's how much he believed in himself. 2 years later, he leads the SEC in rushing for a team that finishes in the top 10 and wins the Cotton Bowl. That's an unbelievable story. That's an unbelievable story from Cody Schrader. He's a guy I'm not betting against. I want Cody Schrader. He's a guy that I'm going to overdraft. Everyone knows that I'm going to be taking him in the 3rd round just because I want Cody Schrader on my team because I think he's got a shot to be something special. If he can make a team, I just think he's a grinder. I think he's a guy that could be just figure out how to be a good pro. Dylan Johnson, running back Washington, he was kind of the guy that everybody kind of didn't talk about as much because they had Penix and the 3 wide receivers. But I think Dylan Johnson really showed a lot this year, played banged up and still was successful for Washington. I think he's a guy that's a sneaky pick somewhere, depending where he lands. And then Jace McClellan's a guy that certain people are really high on compared to others. McClellan, the old Alabama running back, they didn't feed him a ton, but he's a guy I think could be decent at the next level. He's got a good skill set. All those 4 of those guys are guys I'm going to be, it's crazy, but I'm going to be sitting there in the 4th and 5th rounds of my drafts and being like, please let him drop to me. Please let him drop to me because I want those guys. I want those guys bad. Who do you like out of that running back crew? Or is there anybody else that I'm missing that you like, John?
The feel-good story is obviously Cody Schrader. I think if you get a chance to go on YouTube or go on anywhere, read a story about him, about what, like you kind of explained the whole story, but it's such a good feel-good story about a guy like that. But I think Frank Gore Jr. with the pedigree that he's got from having a father in the NFL for a long time, just a guy that looked very good in the Senior Bowl too. Everybody was impressed with Frank Gore Jr. That's somebody that I think he's not here. he might go late third instead of like the fourth or maybe in the fifth round. I think he might.
I
people might
think
take a shot.
I think if you want Gore, I think you got to go in the third.
Yes.
I've been doing a lot of mocks, waiting to see if he gets to me in the fourth, and almost every time he doesn't, or I'm picking like 4-5 and he gets taken 4-1. So he's another one of those guys like we talked about with Baker. If you really like Frank Gore, I think you're going to have to go and just get him when your pick is and not worry about ADP. But I mean, I had Frank Gore on a bunch of C2C and CFF teams. He was on a bad Southern Miss team and he carried them. He even had to play quarterback a little bit in the Wildcat with them. Guy had over 300 yards rushing in his bowl game 2 years ago. I'm not counting out anyone named Frank Gore. That's just, I'm not doing it.
If he doesn't go in your first 36 picks, I would suggest trading your fourth and fifth round pick and go up to 401 to trade for it to get Frank Gore right in that area. That's something I would do for sure.
Yeah, he's a guy, even if he gets in a spot that doesn't seem like a nice landing spot, I'm still taking a chance on him. I just think he's a guy that can make it in the NFL.
Yeah. There's a handful of other guys, but they're all, there's going to be
the one other guy I didn't mention that I kind of like that I think has a shot is Amani Bailey from TCU. He's a guy that's got good athletic ability. I think he's a little underrated now. I could see him being a surprise pick. Maybe he goes in the fourth round to a team and people are like, oh, I didn't know Amani Bailey was going to go that high in a decent landing spot. He's the guy I'm going to keep an eye out. He's a little more landing spot dependent maybe for me, but he's the guy I definitely want to keep an eye on in that group. Anybody else you can think of, John, or do we want to move into quarterbacks here to finish out the show?
No, I mean, that's Kendall Milton would be somebody I'd maybe look not that he's a big pass catcher or nothing like that, but somebody kind of a bigger dude, 6'1", 220, good coming out of Georgia. So something like that, who everybody that comes out of Georgia is fantastic. So if I'm going to throw a dart roll in a fifth round, like I said, tight end or running back, that's who I'd go after somebody like that.
Okay, QBs I got here for my late dart throws. The guy I like the most is Tulane quarterback Michael Pratt. To me, he's in that Spencer Rattler. I actually went to high school with a buddy named Spencer Sadler, so that's why I messed that one up. Spencer Rattler. I think those two guys are right there with me. I can see Pratt being a third round pick. If he goes to a nice situation, he goes to maybe the Broncos, he goes to somebody else in the third round, I would move Pratt up my list, and I would be looking at taking Pratt late second round, early third with Rattler. But depending on when teams like him, I think NFL teams are going to like him more than fantasy people like him. He was a little banged up at Tulane, but he had a good career there. I think NFL people are going to like him more than others. I really could see myself taking Pratt and Rattler over Nix and Penix, if that makes any sense. I think I could see myself taking both those guys over. The other guys, probably the next one, if I'm going to absolutely just say, hey, I'm going total upside, Joe Milton, Tennessee quarterback. Yeah. He is Anthony Richardson as far as athletic ability, size. Guy's got an absolute cannon of an arm. He's huge. The question is, he struggled at Michigan. He finally got to start at Tennessee this year. He was okay at Tennessee. He wasn't great. He's a total project, but he's the guy, if you got him in the right system, you got him with the right QB coach, he's a guy, I mean, that he could go to the moon in talent. I mean, the guy has got all the talent in the world. Could somebody mold it? That's the question. That's what you want in a dart throw. You want to take a guy like him. I know, John, you're going to be grabbing him everywhere, so I'm going to have to be aware of where he's going because I know you are going to grab him every chance you get.
I'm going to overpay, so you're not going to get him anywhere. I'll tell you that much right now. I want someone who's big, who's fast, who is a goal line back, also can run the ball in the middle of the field, run the ball from anywhere, could throw the ball from anywhere. He can literally sit in the end zone on one side of the field and hit the end zone on the other side of the field almost. I mean, he throws the ball 70-some yards in the field. So, I mean, at the Senior Bowl, everybody saw the one pass he threw that was in the ground like 5 yards in front of a running back. I think it was a flanker on it out.
He kind of just dropped it off.
He went 9 for 12 in the Senior Bowl, and everybody's like, oh, they kept showing the one pass how bad it was. Now, his stats he didn't have awesome stats in college, but at the same time, I'd rather have a guy who can do everything than somebody who has limitations. And, it could, I want someone who can read the defenses. I want someone who can, see the whole field. But, I just don't understand why you would pass on a guy like Joe Milton when you see what he does. He threw a bad interception in Senior Bowl, though. I was watching that. It was like right in the hand. Like he didn't even see the linebacker sitting right in front of him when he threw it. So he's going to sit for a year or two. I know that for sure. But,
He's a developmental product. You throw him on your taxi squad, see what happens. I mean, I've seen people say, "Hey, if you love Anthony Richardson so much, how are you not loving? How are you not loving? Joe Milton? Like they're the same athletic profile.
Chris
the only
B,
problem
what's
is
up?
AJ Richardson's a lot younger than Milton. That's it.
Yeah,
Chris
Chris
B.
B.
You give the
Hoping
comment.
for Milton to land a New York Giants, sit in the Dayball system for a couple years. Yeah, I really wouldn't mind holding Joe Milton and like my 29th or 30th spot, or if you have bigger leagues, it's even better. But I wouldn't mind that at all, holding Joe Milton on my roster. Or, wait a year or so when he doesn't play, have somebody else drop him next year to make room and pick him up then. That kind of stuff.
Yeah, the last two QBs out on my list, I'm not a huge fan of these guys. Sam Hartman, good looking dude.
Let's go Irish.
He's gonna look great on somebody's sideline. He's gonna sell some stuff. He's gonna get some deals, but I'm not sure I love Hartman in the NFL. I just don't know. I think he could be a decent career backup. I just don't know if I see him as a starter one day.
No.
Jordan Travis from Florida State took a really bad injury at the end of the year. Scares me. He's another guy. I know some people. I've seen people taking him in the third in some mocks. I just don't see it with Jordan Travis either. I think he was a nice college player. I don't see his upside at the NFL personally. So those are two guys I'm probably maybe if we get real deep and I'm in a 14, 16 team league and it gets thin, I'll maybe grab one of those guys in the fifth.
Carter Bradley or something like that.
Yeah, those guys I'm probably avoiding. If I can get Pratt or, like I said, Joe Milton are probably the guys I'm hitting up at the end there.
Yeah, that's absolutely. I just know that I'm going to save one spot in every draft for Joe Milton, and that's just the way it's going to be. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, you're going to be over Joe Milton, and I'm going to be freaking out trying to make sure I get Frank Gore and Cody Schrader a show. So that's
Jorge, thanks for jumping on. Y'all going strong. Love it. We're trying. We're doing it.
John, we've got it in under an hour and a half here. So final thoughts, I guess, time for us. I know. I knew we'd be right around there, going all the way deep 3 rounds through. But great show, man. I had fun talking through all this with you.
It was absolutely great. Well, as usual, you do most of the talking. So I was trying to get words in, but it's all right. I love it, man.
JT, shut up!
Shut your face. But we will. Thanks for being here for the Dynasty Evaluation Podcast. This is our show on Fantasy and Frames. Me and JT, we're going to come at you as much as we can, like some rookie stuff, some draft coverage, some combine stuff, whatever we can throw at you. We're gonna keep it real, keep it coming, and keep it coming at you. So I'm John McGlynn 75 on X. That's pretty much all the stuff you could find. JT, tell me all about yourself.
Yep, you can find me at JT Orange on the X. You can find my content on DLF. I do IDP rankings, a bunch of other stories. Got a Roman Wilson story coming out about him here shortly. I got a couple ranking things up there. You can find me on my show, The Stew with JT Brew. Run that every week during the season, gambling show, college football, and NFL. Right now, doing my hockey podcast with my buddy Toast over on Total Apex Sports every Wednesday night. So if you're around, check us out on that if you're into hockey as well.
Yeah, I didn't make the playoffs. I'm in the shit bowl in the hockey. And
I missed you, John. I beat you the final week of the season. I had some injuries. I just couldn't. I absolutely. My team started tearing it up the last 3 weeks, and I was too far out of it at that point. So now I gotta try to beat you for the number 1 pick. Now, as me and you are in the toilet bowl.
It is what it is. That's how it works. I'm in the toilet bowl a lot, so don't worry. It's from your place. I'm a frequent flyer in that area. So. Chris B, appreciate you guys. We appreciate you. Thanks for watching the Dynasty Evaluation Show, Fantasy and Frames. We'll try and let everybody know when we're on. And sometimes our shows are impromptu. Sometimes they're scheduled. But either way, we'll be here. You'll see them somewhere, hopefully live. So you can keep up the comments. A lot of comments today, guys. Really appreciate you guys checking in these live streams. Which, during the day shows are great for us because I'm off sometimes when I work nights or when I have my days off. JT's got a lot of, he runs a restaurant. A lot of time during the day to talk about this stuff. So we like to use our time when our kids are at school and doing all that stuff like that to bring you the best content on the face of the earth. So you got it today. Thanks for joining in. Talk to you later.